The member for Denison has the call.
Speaker, my question is to the Prime Minister. Prime Minister, the Australian Federal Police were withdrawn from Hobart Airport in 2014, even though the 2007 Glasgow airport attack forewarned us of the vulnerability of attacks at second-tier airports. Moreover, your government concedes, especially after Manchester, that homegrown terrorists and soft targets are pressing concerns right now. In other words, the risk isn't diminished for non-international airports. So, Prime Minister, now that you've increased the AFP's budget by over $500 million, will you urgently remedy this alarming situation and reinstate the AFP presence at Hobart Airport, or will your government continue to treat Tasmanians as second-class citizens?
Members on my right, the Prime Minister has the call.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I thank the honourable member for his question. Mr Speaker, the Office of Transport Security is responsible for the categorisation of security at controlled airports, and it was determined, as the honourable member said, in 2014 that the threat environment did not require the presence of AFP officers there. That risk assessment was based on the advice of the AFP and the intelligence agencies. I've spoken today again to the Deputy Commissioner National Security of the Australian Federal Police, and he's advised me that the risk profile has not changed. The Tasmania Police provide community policing and crime prevention support at the airport in the same way that they provide services at other Australian airports. Now, Mr Speaker, the AFP has a presence in Tasmania and works seamlessly with the Tasmania Police and all of our law enforcement and national security agencies. Those men and women are in the front line keeping us safe. They put their lives on the line. They are the best in the world. And, Mr Speaker, on Monday we saw in Queensland the tragic murder of Senior Constable Brett Fort, a police officer who, like too many before him, lost his life in the line of duty. Our condolences and our love go to his wife, his children, his family and his colleagues. Now, Mr Speaker, the threat of Islamist terrorism, the threat of this extremist violence is here at home and it is right around the world. We saw last night a young 12-year-old Australian girl killed by a terrorist attack, an ISIL attack in Baghdad. She was visiting Baghdad with her family during Ramadan to see her grandfather. Another innocent killed by this violent tendency, this violent terrorist movement that is gnawing away, seeking to destroy and pervert and blaspheme one of the great religions of the world. Now, our police officers and our intelligence agencies are in the front line of keeping us safe in that battle. And our allies, our best collaborators, are Muslim leaders, both at home and abroad, like President Widodo in Indonesia, who remind us and say repeatedly and stand for an Islam that is moderate, that is tolerant, that is democratic. That's their commitment. They are our best allies in this battle. But in the forefront stand those police officers and those intelligence agencies, and we have given them and are giving them more support, both in law, legislation and resources, than ever before, and we will continue to do so to keep all Australians and all Tasmanians safe.
I appreciate that the member for Denison had risen on a point of order. It was as the clock ran down to zero, but given the nature of the topic, I allowed the Prime Minister to conclude. The Leader of the Opposition on indulgence.
On indulgence, I wish to associate the opposition with the remarks the Prime Minister has made about the tragic loss of our Queensland police member, but also the death, which we've heard about overnight, of a 12-year-old schoolgirl from Melbourne. I've been in touch with Samir Kafaji. He's the president of the Iraq Council of Victoria. Naib's family had been here for about 20 years. They were refugees. They came out of Iraq to Saudi Arabia to a camp and then as refugees to Australia. Naib was 12. She was born in Australia. It's devastating news. This was happened during the end of a day of fasting at Ramadan. She and her mother and her uncle had gone to visit grandparents in Baghdad. The father was breaking his own fast late yesterday in Melbourne when he got a phone call which no parent could ever imagine receiving. He's now made his way to Baghdad. Our thoughts are with her two brothers and her mother. The mother was wounded. The uncle, but not too seriously. The uncle has been wounded more seriously. Samir was able to inform me, and I take this opportunity, that little Naib was very active in her faith community. She would work hard to clean and prepare the mosque and prepare the food. And I've also spoken to the principal of Sirius College where she attended, Sadir Takamoglu. And obviously, like all parliamentarians, I asked the obvious question, how are all the other kids coping? He said it's quite devastating. The schools put counselling in place, and it really does just really leave one to conclude. How do we explain to other 12-year-olds that their friend won't be getting off the plane back from Iraq? How do we explain to our young this tragic death? It's not a conversation any of us want to ever have. So I too want to applaud the AFP because they do their very best to stop us having to have that conversation.
The member for Denison.
Speaker, on indulgence, I do wish to acknowledge the terrible tragedy in Queensland and in Baghdad, but I do just, in the public interest, want to impress upon the Prime Minister that in this difficult environment that we're in, we do have a capital city airport with no
the member for Denison,
police presence.
I appreciate his passion on the subject, but we can't have a situation where he gets 45 seconds to ask his question. The Prime Minister's answered it. He did rise on a point of order, as I said, as the clock ran down to 0. We can't have a rule in this place where members have more than one question, okay? Unless the call's alternating. It's the member for Dawson's call.